The night sky over Earth was calm and serene, the stars twinkling like tiny diamonds against the velvety darkness. But something extraordinary was about to happen, something no human could have imagined. High above the planet, hidden from the view of even the most advanced satellites, a sleek, silvery spacecraft hovered silently. Inside, an alien girl, named Zira, prepared for her mission. Zira wasn't just any alien, she was a scientist from the Zentharians, a highly advanced race known for their knowledge and intellect. Her people had conquered many of the challenges that plagued other civilizations, but now they faced a crisis that threatened their very existence. The Zentharians' method of reproduction had become increasingly ineffective, and their population was dwindling. After years of failed attempts to resolve the issue, their leaders turned their gaze toward Earth, where humans thrived and multiplied with ease. Zira was chosen for a special mission. She would travel to Earth to observe, study, and ultimately attempt to understand the humans' methods of reproduction. The data she collected could hold the key to saving her species. The mission was of the utmost importance, and she had trained for years for this moment. As her ship descended through the Earth's atmosphere, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Her slender fingers danced across the controls, cloaking the ship in invisibility as it landed in a remote desert. The only sound was the soft hum of the spacecraft powering down. Zira stepped out into the night, her tall, graceful figure standing out against the barren landscape. She adjusted a small device on her wrist, which immediately began scanning the environment, gathering information about Earth's atmosphere, climate, and life forms. Zira's appearance was almost human, though her large, luminous eyes and silvery blue skin set her apart. With the help of her technology, she could blend in with the humans, her features subtly shifting to appear more like one of them. She had spent years studying Earth's languages and cultures, and she was ready to begin her mission. Her first stop was a nearby town, a small, sleepy community nestled at the edge of the desert. Zira walked among the humans, watching them interact, taking note of their behaviors and relationships. She quickly realized that human reproduction was not just a biological process, it was deeply intertwined with emotions and social customs. Love, affection, desire, these were foreign concepts to Zira's people. The Zentharians had long abandoned such primitive emotions in favor of logic and efficiency, but the humans seemed to thrive on them. In her time among them, Zira observed the complex dance of human courtship. She watched couples in restaurants, holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes. She saw the nervous energy of young lovers on first dates, the comfortable intimacy of long-term partners, and the tender care between parents and children. Each interaction was a puzzle, and Zira was determined to understand every piece. Her mission became more challenging as she realized that human reproduction wasn't just about science, it was about connection. The physical act was only part of the equation. Humans formed bonds, built trust, and developed relationships that seemed to enhance the reproductive process. This was a stark contrast to the sterile, clinical approach of the Zentharians, who viewed reproduction as a purely functional necessity. Zira's observations grew more intense as she began to interact with humans herself. She disguised her alien features, blending seamlessly into the community. She struck up conversations with locals, learning more about their thoughts on relationships, love, and family. The more she learned, the more intrigued she became. Humans seemed to thrive on the very emotions her people had discarded. One evening, while sitting in a quiet cafe, Zira met a man named David. He was kind, curious, and intelligent, a scientist like her. Oh, his field was much different. Over the course of several days, they talked about everything from Earth's history to its technological advancements. David had a way of making Zira feel at ease, though she was careful to keep her true identity hidden. She was here to observe, not to form attachments, but something about David fascinated her. His warmth, his curiosity, it was unlike anything she had experienced. As time passed, Zira found herself drawn to him in a way that confused and unsettled her. She had come to Earth for a scientific mission, yet here she was, feeling emotions she had never known. She began to wonder if her people had been wrong to dismiss emotions as unnecessary. Perhaps there was something more to human reproduction than just biology. One evening, as they sat her day together under the stars, David asked her a question that caught her off guard. Do you ever feel like there's more to life than what we know? like there's something bigger out there, waiting for us to discover. Zira hesitated. She had spent her life seeking knowledge, always looking for answers, but in that moment, she realized that humans had something her people lacked: a sense of wonder, of curiosity, of connection. They didn't just live, they experienced life with their hearts as much as with their minds. I think, she replied carefully, that sometimes the answers we're looking for aren't found in science or facts. Sometimes, they're found in the connections we make with others. David smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. I couldn't agree more. Zira's mission was nearly complete. She had gathered vast amounts of data on human reproduction, but she had also learned something far more valuable, something she could never have predicted. The Zentharians had sought a solution to the reproduction problem through science, but perhaps the answer lay in something they had long since forgotten: the power of connection, of emotion, of love. As she prepared to leave Earth and return to her people, Zira realized that her mission had changed her in ways she couldn't fully understand. She had come to study humans, but in the process, she had discovered something about herself. The cold logic of her species no longer seemed sufficient. Perhaps the future of the Zentharians wasn't just in the science of reproduction, but in rediscovering the emotions they had once lost. Zira left Earth with a newfound understanding, carrying with her not just data, but the hope that her people could learn to embrace the very thing they had long dismissed: the beauty of human connection.
As Zira's ship ascended through Earth's atmosphere, she found herself gazing back at the blue planet with a sense of nostalgia, a strange emotion for someone who had spent only a few months there. Yet, Earth had left an indelible mark on her. The data she had collected on human reproduction was valuable, but the emotional experiences she had gained were far more profound. Her mission had been purely scientific, but now, her heart, if one could call it that, felt the weight of something much deeper. The journey back to her home planet, Zenthara, was swift. Her people were eager to hear the results of her mission. They had been waiting for a solution, a breakthrough that could reverse their population crisis. As Zira's ship docked in the capital city's high-tech landing port, she prepared herself for the debriefing. The cold, gleaming structures of Zenthara's capital stood in sharp contrast to the natural beauty she had witnessed on Earth. Everything here was precise, calculated, and sterile. No one lingered in conversation. There were no handshakes, no laughter, no warmth. It was efficient, but something felt missing. Inside the Grand Council chamber, Zira stood before the Zenith, the ruling body of her planet. The leaders, their faces emotionless as always, watched her closely. Their pale blue eyes shimmered with intelligence but were devoid of the spark she had seen in human eyes. Zira, the council leader began, his voice calm and controlled. You have returned from Earth. We await your findings. Zira took a breath, steadying herself. I have collected comprehensive data on human reproductive methods. As requested, she started, projecting holograms of genetic charts, hormonal cycles, and physical processes. Human biology is efficient in reproduction, but the process is deeply intertwined with emotional connections, something we have long discarded. A murmur spread across the council. Zentharians were taught to view emotions as weaknesses, obstacles to logic and progress. Yet here was Zira, suggesting that emotions might play a crucial role in reproduction. Explain, the council leader commanded, his brows slightly furrowed, a rare show of curiosity. Humans do not simply reproduce out of necessity, Zira explained, her voice gaining strength. Their bonds, what they call love, are integral to their reproductive success. These emotional connections create stronger family units, which in turn enhance the survival and well-being of their offspring. Reproduction is not just a biological act for them, it is also a means of forging connections that enhance their species' evolution. The council fell silent. Zira could sense the weight of her words pressing on them. This was not what they had expected to hear. They had wanted a simple scientific solution, an easy fix for their declining birth rate. But Zira was offering something far more complex, a radical change in the way they viewed themselves and their future. We have no need for such primitive notions, another council member interrupted. Our society has evolved beyond emotion. Have we? Zira's question hung in the air. I spent months among humans. I witnessed their weaknesses, yes, but I also saw their strengths, their capacity to care for one another, to support one another, to thrive together. Their emotional connections enhance their reproduction, not hinder it, and I believe that is the answer we seek. The council leader leaned forward, his steely gaze piercing through the air. "You're suggesting that we must reintroduce emotion into our society? That we must become like the humans?" "Not become like them," Zira clarified, "but learn from them. We have isolated ourselves from emotions, thinking them a hindrance, but they could be the key to saving our species. Perhaps the reason our reproduction methods have failed is because we have severed ourselves from the very thing that drives connection, bonding, and the survival of a species: emotion." The council was torn. The idea of embracing emotions was anathema to their core beliefs. Yet, Zira's findings were undeniable. Their current methods weren't working, their population was on the brink of collapse, and time was running out. After what felt like an eternity, the council leader spoke again. "Your findings are unexpected. We will need time to deliberate." Zira bowed slightly, understanding that her radical suggestion would not be accepted easily. She left the chamber with a heavy heart, knowing that her people were resistant to change, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that her time on Earth had changed her, in more ways than one. Days turned into weeks, and Zira awaited the council's decision. During this time, she found herself reflecting on her experiences with the humans, especially her time with David. His kindness, his curiosity, and the way he had made her feel something she had never experienced before. Could it have been affection? It was a troubling thought, yet also a comforting one. For the first time in her life, Zira felt alive in a way she never had before. One evening, as she walked through the pristine gardens of the capital, she received a summons from the council. The decision had been made. In the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Zira stood before the zenith once again, her heart, if that's what it was, pounding in her chest. The council leader spoke first. "After careful consideration, we have decided to adopt a phased approach to your findings. We will begin by reintroducing certain aspects of emotional bonding into controlled environments. The process will be gradual, and the emotional components will be monitored closely. We cannot risk allowing emotions to overtake logic." It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Zira nodded, understanding that change would come slowly, but it was a start. As she left the chamber, Zira felt a sense of relief, tempered by the knowledge that her people were on a path that could change the course of their history. Perhaps the Zentharians could find a way to balance logic and emotion, intellect and connection, and perhaps, one day, they would truly understand what it meant to be alive. For now, though, Zira's journey was far from over. She had learned much from the humans, but there was still more to discover, both about them and about herself. As she looked up at the stars, she wondered what the future would hold, not just for her people, but for her own heart.
Zira's life had settled into a new rhythm after the council's decision. Though the Zentharians were slow to change, the seeds of something new had been planted. The reintroduction of controlled emotional bonding into their society would be gradual, but Zira was optimistic. For the first time in many cycles, her people were beginning to understand that emotions weren't simply weaknesses, they were powerful forces that could shape the future of a species. Despite this progress, Zira couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Earth and its people had left a mark on her, one she couldn't ignore. The thought of David lingered in her mind, like a faint whisper that grew louder with each passing day. His warmth, his curiosity, and the connection they had shared, brief though it had been, had awakened something in her that Zenthara could never provide. She often found herself gazing up at the stars, wondering if he ever thought about her, if he questioned where she had disappeared to so suddenly. For Zira, the pull of Earth was strong, as if a part of her had been left behind. Yet, as a Zenthian scientist, she had duties to fulfill here. Her people needed her. They were on the brink of a transformation that could save their species, and she had played a crucial role in that. But there was a conflict deep within her, a conflict between duty and the growing desire to return to the one place where she had felt truly connected. One evening, as she walked through the towering spires of the capital, a message arrived. It was from the council. Zira had been selected to lead the next phase of their population restoration efforts. The program would focus on incorporating emotional bonding into the Zentharian reproductive process, and Zira would be responsible for guiding the project. It was a great honor, one that solidified her status as a key figure in Zenthara's future. Yet, despite the honor, Zira felt an emptiness. The data she had collected, the research she would oversee, it all felt hollow compared to what she had experienced on Earth. The emotions, The connections, the unpredictability of human life, it was chaotic, but it was also vibrant, alive. Days passed, and Zira struggled with her thoughts. Could she abandon her people in their time of need? Could she leave behind the future she had fought so hard to create? But could she truly deny the pull of Earth and the life she had glimpsed there? Then, one night, as she stared up at the shimmering expanse of stars, Zira made her decision. She had spent her life serving her people, but now, she understood that to truly help them, she needed to follow her own path. Earth had shown her something precious, that life wasn't just about logic and survival. It was about feeling, about connection, about living. The next morning, Zira went to the council and submitted her resignation from the project. The council members were shocked, but she was firm in her decision. My mission to Earth taught me more than you can imagine, she explained. The data I provided will help our species, but the experiences I had, they changed me. I cannot continue this path without exploring what I have learned. The council, though reluctant, respected her wishes. They had seen the passion in her words and the conviction in her heart. Zira's role would be filled by another, and the project would continue, but her journey was taking her elsewhere. With her decision made, Zira returned to her spacecraft, the same vessel that had carried her to Earth months before. But this time, she wasn't returning as a mere observer or a scientist. She was going back to seek something more, to understand what it meant to live, to love, and to connect on a deeper level. As her ship ascended into the sky, Zira felt a sense of freedom she had never known. She set a course for Earth, her heart racing with anticipation. She didn't know if David would still be there, or if he had moved on, but that was the beauty of Earth: uncertainty, the possibility. She was no longer bound by the cold logic of her people. She had embraced the very thing the Zentharians had once rejected: emotion. The journey to Earth was long, but Zira's mind raced with thought of what awaited her. When she finally descended through the atmosphere, her ship invisible to the human eye, she felt a sense of homecoming she hadn't expected. Earth, with all its imperfections, had become her second home. She landed in the same desert where her mission had first begun, the familiar silence of the landscape surrounding her. This time, however, she wasn't here for research or observation. She was here for herself. Zira made her way to the small town where she had first met David. The streets were quiet, the air filled with the scent of summer. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, two emotions that she had once considered alien, but now embraced fully. As she walked through the town, she spotted him. David was sitting at the same cafe where they had spent hours talking about science, life, and the universe. He looked different or thoughtful, perhaps a little older, but the spark of curiosity was still there in his eyes. Zira hesitated for a moment, unsure of how he would react. Would he recognize her? Would he want to see her again? But then, David looked up, his gaze locking onto hers. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. His eyes widened in disbelief, and then a smile slowly spread across his face. "Zira," he whispered, as if afraid she might vanish again. She nodded, her own smile forming. "I came back." David stood up, walking toward her with a mix of wonder and relief. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again. I didn't think I'd come back," she admitted, "but I realized that there's more to life than logic and data. There's something here, something I needed to understand." David smiled, his eyes soft with understanding. "I'm glad you came back." And in that moment, Zira knew that she had made the right choice. She had found the balance she had been searching for between her people and herself, between logic and emotion, between the cold silence of space and the warmth of human connection. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Zira was ready to embrace it. She had crossed galaxies, studied worlds, and changed the course of her species' history. But now, she was about to embark on the greatest journey of living, of loving, and of being truly